This is why they want an attorney. That's why they want an attorney.
Well, they got to have an attorney to turn it into.
I have an attorney, yeah.
So anyways, in New York they have a land transfer tax. In Arizona, they have a affidavit of property value. So it's they either have one or the other in the various states. Some
Right.
like Texas, they don't have anything, and so Texas is a little bit different. But anyways, there's in New York they have a land transfer tax, so you have to pay the tax, right? And you said there's actually a couple forms you have to fill out, right?
They say they won't record the deed unless you have those other two forms, which technically
right.
Yeah.
So you don't fill them out, and you send it to them by registered mail, and then what happens is they'll send it back, and like in Arizona, I don't have it here, but I'll bring it where they send it back, and they have a little. It's an unsigned letter because they can never, and they can't have anybody's name on there because that's perjury of oath, right? Anyways, the unsigned letter, it says, you didn't fill out your affidavit of property value, and so we've attached one here for you to fill out, and we put this in a special file until you fill out the affidavit of property value. Well, that's perfect. That's a non-tax-paying file. And so I never heard another word from them. I just keep it, and I never send it in. And the same thing in New York. It's very similar because they were threatening a foreclosure, right?
Yep.
He hadn't filled out, he hadn't paid the tax, he hadn't done any of that stuff.
Right.
They were hoping he'd take the bait. And he sent them a conditional acceptance. Well, now they're screwed. They can't do anything. I'll bet you that it's off the tax rolls. I'll bet you.
Well, they have. Well, but the thing is this: I'll send something I'll send something requiring, or if they do try to pull any nonsense, I'll go up to the tax collector because I think he has to have an open office, right?
Yeah. Well, they have
the mayor?
actually.
Because his name was on there, and the mayor's name was on that form.
See, I went through. This all comes from a federal act. There's an act in 1861 and an act in 1862, and one of them is for sales taxes, and the other one's for property taxes. And so, in both of them, they both have a bond. They all both have to have a bond. I'm pretty sure they have to have an oath of office too.
Okay.
And so, I'd have to look.
Okay.
Now the actual tax assessor collector, I'll bet you he has an oath of office, but the employees probably don't. Just
Right.
the tax assessor collector, and he's the guy that you have to go after.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
so then he hires all these employees. He doesn't tell them what's going on, and they go out and basically solicit you. And if you take the bait, then they reel you in and they collect their taxes.
Right.
And he gets a commission because it talks about it in the act too. Anyways, yeah. So we're talking about land deeds right now, but I think that they're. I think it's off the tax rolls. I think that you did it right. So that's good to know about what you did, because then that's an example of what other people can do in New York too.
I have a question. Did you use a lawyer and an attorney for
No.
that?
No, you can't.
No, I never. Actually, I was originally going to do something different from someone. And then he, by the way, told me.
But they used an attorney, didn't they?
Yes.
So a lot of times the attorney will represent both sides anyways. But that doesn't matter because, and that's probably how they got the address.
You have to sign off on that.
Well,
'Cause
yeah, but
normally, no, it's a conflict of interest, and they give you a form to sign to say
It's
that
maybe,
you waive,
I don't know.
you waive your
I didn't say
consideration.
that.
I can tell you that in any case,
but normally they give you one at least.
in any case where there's a prosecutor, he's representing you, guaranteed. And so there's no signing off on that. And
But where there's an obvious conflict of interest, where they're representing both sides,
Right.
where you can obviously see it,
right,
because I did it with a house purchase in Canada, so, but I would imagine it'd be the same thing.
Yeah,
in
it's
the
the
US
same.
as well.
It's the same.
Same laws, same ethics and such.
Right.
And I had to sign a form to say
But-
that I waived my
And we're
understanding that they were representing both parties.
right. We're going to be going through. There's the stuff we're going through today and tomorrow is going to be all new material. We're going to give Carl an opportunity to speak. He's a former police officer, and
Don't
he's
hold it against me.
he's doing all the stuff that we're doing, and so we gave him a chance to speak last time, and it got cut off, probably because my memory ran out. So we'll give him an opportunity earlier on in the day, so that it doesn't get cut off, and so he's going to tell us about stuff that he does. But and all of the presentations I have, and if, you know, you guys can, I'll let you guys tell me what you want to go over first, if you have any preferences. There's going to be one on, I got this one on bar members and the Bar Treaty of 1947, and the communist takeover, which is what we're essentially going through right now, although I think Trump, matter of fact, we're going to start off with just a couple of videos. Anyways, then there's the Form 1020. I don't know how many of you have done anything with the Form 1020. That one is really slick. There's a conference call that a friend of mine in Texas does. His name is Kerry Zulman. He was indicted back, probably was back in the 90s, because I remember there was a guy by the name of Phil Marsh that was, you know, talking about taxes, and I remember going to some of those events, and I was living in Utah at the time, and he got indicted, and about 17 other people, and Kerry Zulman was in that group that got indicted. And what happened was Kerry Zulman, his last name is Z, so he was the last one, and he all the rest of them spent the rest of their life in jail, and he went home that day, and it took him 8 hours just to get his name out of him.
Wow.
He thinks outside the box, right? Yeah. He went in there, and he had a contract for the attorney to sign, and the attorney says, I'm not signing that, because the contract says you're going to do what I tell you to do, or else you agree to do the time. And so the attorney says, I'm not signing that. And so then he was on his own, didn't have an attorney. Gee, what damn the bad luck, eh? Anyway, so then he basically had a glossary. He says, I want the court to agree to this definitions of words, so we all know what we're talking about, can have a meeting of the minds here. And they says, no, we're not agreeing to that. And so then they said, so what's your name? And he says, well, my dad calls me Bubba. And it just kind of went from there. And he did all sorts of stuff. I mean, they would ask him a question, and he'd go, and they'd say, are you crazy? And he'd say, well, I gave you a glossary, I don't know what you're saying, you know. And so, I mean, he just tied him up for it's the whole day. And at the end of the day, I mean, they let him go, and he went home, and he was acquitted, eh?
Well, there you go.
Anyway, so he thinks outside the box, is my point. He thinks outside the box.
Okay.
And he came up with this Form 1020. And it's his own made-up form. Okay, it's not an IRS form, it's not any government form. It's a Form 1020. I've got a YouTube video about it. And it basically says, sure, no problem, I'll pay whatever you want me to pay. Tell me what to pay. And they'll never tell you. And so we'll go through that in the presentation. That's another one. I've got a follow-up because I did the Form 1020, and I sent it to the IRS, and so we'll go through what they responded with. And so that's another one. So we're going to do the Form 1020. How does martial law end? Okay, and so how we can tell if martial law ends. That's one we're going to go through. Matter of fact, I talk about that in my book about Trump. This is my book about Trump. It's about the deep state, who they are, how they got there, where they came from, their history. And the stuff that's going on right now is basically the same kind of stuff that went on in the War of Independence. And it's been going on, the same stuff has been going on for centuries. And so I can show them, and I do aerospace engineering consulting, my business card's right there. So one thing they taught me, I helped design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. I used to work at U.S. Airways in Phoenix, Sky Harbor Airport. I took care of their landing gear. Anyways, one thing, see, I started out as a mechanic, okay, and I worked my way up into engineering. And so I don't have a degree. And one thing they always insisted that I do is support everything that I do. So I got in the habit of, I was good at research, and I was good at proving why I'm wanting to do this. And that's why they like me in engineering, right? Anyways, so this book, there's really not very much in here that I say on my own. There's all sorts of court citations, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff like that in here that I use for authorities. So there's really not much I say that's my opinion in there. I don't know how many of you remember, there is a couple things. And I say it's my opinion. For example, Howard Hughes. You guys remember Howard Hughes?
So Spruce.
Huh? Spruce Goose.
Spruce
That's
Goose.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my opinion. I have no proof of this, but it's my opinion that all of these billionaires, when they get to be a billionaire, they get approached by the New World Order crowd and they get told that you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. And Howard Hughes, that's the reason he was hiding out all the time.
Yeah.
He was worried about being poisoned. I think it's because he didn't want to go with their program.
Right.
And so he was hiding out all the time. And I think the same thing happened with Trump too. I think, I don't have any proof, but I do know that there was a helicopter crash in 1984. 3 of Trump's executives got killed, and he was supposed to have been on that flight, and canceled out at the last minute. And one of the things that the helicopter crashed because the blades came off. And you know, I do aerospace engineering consulting. Helicopters crash for a lot of reasons, but blades coming off is not one of them unless they're in a war and they're getting shot at or something like that. But otherwise, the blades don't come off. There's other things that happen with helicopters that makes them crash. And so, it's very suspicious in my opinion. And so I think Trump. And again, I don't have any proof except that I do know that he's got his own security. He doesn't trust the Secret Service, and it's good. And he went and financed his own campaign. Matter of fact, he talks about it. I've seen him talking about it in YouTube videos because he doesn't want to be beholden to Wall Street.
Right.
And so he's financed his own campaign, and then he works off of donations from people like us. And so, anyways, so that's my book. And it goes through who they are and where they came from. Did you know there's 2 national governments? I think probably, you guys probably do, everybody in here I think knows that.
Yeah.
And there's one that operates, there's a Supreme Court case called Downs versus Bidwell that says that one operates within the Constitution and the other one does not. And then if you look at the Federal Reserve note, you want to pull one out sometime and look at it. In the Articles of Confederation, it says the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And that's what's on the Federal Reserve note. But if you look on...
Capital.
Huh?
It's all capital.
That's true, that's true. And that's yeah, it's a corporation.
Okay.
And that's a different entity, there's different jurisdictions. So there's at least 2. There's 2 that I can prove. There's more than that, I'm sure, but I can't prove them yet. Anyways, if you look on the top of a silver eagle, it just says United States of America. It'll also say it on your passport. It says it on Air Force One. it says it all over the place. And so, two separate entities, and they're all over the place. You'll see them. So, and this entity, the second one's gone bankrupt now. Went bankrupt in 1933, I guess. And when any corporation goes bankrupt, it gets seized by the creditors. And so it's now owned and operated by the deep state. And this is their typical MO as a police officer, modus operandi, right? It's the way they do it. They do it. They've been doing it this way for centuries. Is they create a fictitious debt and then put it into bankruptcy and then seize it, and then they can do whatever they want. And there's congressional on the U.S. House of Representatives. That's why Pelosi will get up there and say, "We can't read this bill until after we pass it." She's taking orders from the owners, right? It's exactly what goes on. Anyways, so that's my book. Let's start off by watching a couple of videos. These are ones that I got last night. There we go. Supposed to be doing a webcast, and so I'm wondering if anybody showed up yet. Not yet. Okay. Well, it's available for, there's 3 people that might log in, and I just have to, just want to make sure they're not trying to contact me. Okay, doesn't look like it. So let's do the first video, which is this one. And we're going to share that. In case they show up. There we go. No, that's not it.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. We have put together,
Notice.
I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
That was tweeted by
We have
Trump.
put together, I think, the most extensive
October
and
24th.
inclusive voter fraud
Okay. So
organization
been
in the
a while.
history of American politics. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
So now, I don't know if any of you have
That
read his
wasn't-
book. I read
I
his
think
book.
that was a slip this time.
I read his book in the, my brother-in-law gave me his book called The Art of the Deal in the 90s. And Trump is brilliant. I mean, he's 3 steps ahead of him. He's playing 3-dimensional chess, and they're playing checkers. You know what I mean? Especially with somebody like Biden. He's an idiot. You know, he can't even speak right half the time. You know what I mean? And so, So here's another video.
This is really powerful.
One, it's not a hoax. What's happening now, and the reason I couldn't come on the Alex Jones show last night was I was not given the permission that I needed to in order to say what I'm about to say now. I do not work for the federal government. I'm not paid by them. Let me just say again what I said in 2016. There are honorable members of our intelligence, military, and civilian community in the government who understood exactly how corrupt Biden and the Democratic machinery is, was, and will be. This is really a sting operation, contrary to what everybody else said. Trump knew this was happening. Eric knew this was happening and warned the public. I knew this was happening. However, I could not say anything about it. What happened was we watermarked every ballot with what's called the QFS blockchain encryption code. In other words, we know pretty well where every ballot is, where it went, and who has it. So this is not a stolen election. On the contrary, we reversed the entire game of war along the lines of the Sons of the Art of War. And Trump was brilliant and still is brilliant at it. The reason he hasn't been seen, and Alex correctly said, oh, I haven't seen him in several days. Well, in the art of the war, you pull back, allow your enemy to make all the mistakes that they are making, manipulate the situation, expose them, and then come in for the final killing. And that's what's happening now. None of this was unexpected. All of this was expected. All of this is part of the sting operation we're running. And let me tell you that 48 hours ago, not only did we put markers on those ballots, but I can say now, with the permission of people in the intelligence community and elsewhere, that we have sent out thousands and thousands of National Guards to 12 different states, Washington, Delaware, Texas, Arizona, Alabama, and everywhere. So now you have to consider and rethink what this is really about. The genius of Trump is that he is able to pull back at any point and manipulate the opponent without the opponent ever realizing. He has said repeatedly, hashtag steal the vote. That's exactly what he has said for months. Then he made a very clear implication. He said, I will use common sense or my intelligence, i.e. both literal and figurative intelligence. And those of us in the intelligence community, be it who they are, again what I said in 2016, when we exposed Hillary Clinton, we now expose, and it was Trump who initiated this, Biden family. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Jim Biden, Frank, the whole family was played right into a game where they were convicted, and you're seeing what's happening now. What was not announced was that we watermarked all the ballots with what I said at QFS blockchain, which is a very hard encryption code to break. And the second thing is we sent probably 20,000 or more National Guards 48 hours ago. None of it was reported, and I thank the press for not reporting it and others. So what in fact is happening is you're seeing a sophisticated sting operation that was initiated by Trump. I'm just a lowly peasant in this game, and honestly, I was informed that I could say something about it today, only last night. That's why I could not come on.
Well,
This is the reverse of what you guys have been thinking. It's not a civil war. We have not been surprised in any way. This has been set up by Trump for a long, long time. In the same way that we knew about Hillary Clinton, I warned about the coup that we would do a counter coup, and this is our counter coup again against the Bidens. And that's exactly what we expected. The corruption in the mail, the corruption in USPS, the corruption with the Democrats, everywhere and anywhere. There was no surprise here. And that's why we deployed National Guard soldiers to 12 different states.
Well, Steve, you've just broken certainly perhaps the biggest news since the election here on this show. I have to play this out logically in my head. Our arrests,
That's why I go on your show to basically, I keep.
Well, I love you, Steve. I'd kiss you on the lips right now if it wasn't digitally.
Yeah.
But
There's too many people watching it.
we're open like that. We're tolerant. But Steve, following your logic here, I mean, are arrests inevitably coming down the road?
Yeah. They're coming not just down the road, they're being implemented. What you saw Corey Lewandowski and Pam Biondi saying when they were in Clay County and as well in Philadelphia, that was not just a threat. That was exactly what's going to happen. People will be arrested as of tonight, tomorrow, and it will go on for quite a while. And this was a total sting operation that I can say.
So explain.
Anybody else?
Well,
and I have the permission to say it. I do not deal with classified information, as you know. I do not work for our government, but because I'm loyal to the Republic, and I work with a lot of people who are loyal to this Republic, including the 16 intelligence services, the Secret Service, our civilian service, they've all been great, and they've kept it quiet. And I've been given the permission to say what I've just said. I have nothing more to say, but this is not a surprise here. This is the biggest sting operation probably in our country that we've ever had.
Well, and it would be the genius of Trump. But Steve, I got to ask you in the last minute 45 here to kind of hone in. So how is this watermark on the ballots? What is the significance of that as to, is it going to stop from fake ballots being counted, or how is that going to be used?
Well, we use it in any way that we need to use it in terms of counting, knowing which ones were fake, which ones were not. It's a very sophisticated code. So if you just throw them away, these are cyber communication implementations that we have the code for. We know exactly what was thrown away. We know exactly what was placed. We know exactly who has it, and we know exactly where it went. I can't go any further than that.
Wow, this is huge news that Steve Pachenik is breaking on our show right now. For me to reiterate, I guess in my own words, President Trump and his administration and friendlies inside the White House in D.C. have launched a sting operation knowing this Democrat fraud was coming. And, you know, Steve, you said Trump's been talking about this for months. Actually, it's really been years. This is from President Trump on October 10th, 2012. He said, "It doesn't matter who you vote for, it matters who is counting the votes." End quote. Be careful of voter fraud. So he's obviously known about this forever. I mean, is this the genius of Trump playing out? I mean, long term?
Yeah. Trump is far more brilliant than people understood. I knew about Trump. I don't personally work for him, and I don't feel personally.
Okay, so that's the end of that. This is actually a YouTube video, but I downloaded it last night because I was wanted to make sure that it didn't get taken down by YouTube. So this is right here. It's still up.
Okay.
So if anybody wants a link to it, I'll be glad to send it to you. Anyways, so
I already have it on my laptop because I was watching it.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
Right.
So I think it's good news.
Yep.
So there's other presentations. We're going to talk about protected person under international law. We're going to talk about secret warfare, statement of original status, territorialism, and without prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
So does anybody have any, is there any particular one you want to start off with?
Is the without prejudice one a short one?
Well, they're all, fairly long, but it basically, yeah, the without prejudice is, if they're forcing you to sign anything, you put without prejudice there.
Well, I actually do all rights reserved without prejudice.
The all rights reserved would work too.
I put both.
Right.
I actually tried to do that on my passport application in the UK. I ended up with a spat, English word.
Mm-hmm.
Went on for 6 weeks, backwards and forwards on email. And I eventually got the supervisor to say in writing that he was forcing me under duress to sign the way they wanted me to sign.
Right.
Because they wouldn't accept that on the passport.
without prejudice takes the signature off it. There's no signature on there. And so they want a signature.
I did that with, because for a while, I was forced, a couple years ago, to get in, from Pennsylvania, a driver's license. I think the test over the whole thing, because I hadn't, one that expired from Connecticut, I was living in Connecticut. I just, and I had all this on there, and the guy says, we will not accept this. In fact, they wouldn't let me take the test because I wrote something about without prejudice or whatever on the, you got to take that off. They went back, and one went inside. This was the second time I was over there, right? Because, and it was like, it must have been almost half an hour inside, and she said, because I have a friend who brought me there, and apparently they went inside with some room, and they locked the door, and they were talking, well, it's just to take the test. And then when it came out, I finally passed everything, and I went in, and they called the supervisor over. He says, you can't do that. Here in Pennsylvania, this is a privilege for you to drive. Like, I'm not driving, but it's a privilege, you know what I mean? So, no, you could just, I put by, that was about it. I just,
Yeah.
So.
Well, lots of times now what I do on a signature that they question, I just put R.R. after the signature.
Okay.
Yeah, well, without prejudice actually takes the signature off the page. There's no signature there. You didn't agree. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in that presentation. I guess we'll start off with this do-it-yourself Form 1020 follow-up. First of all, I'm not a lawyer. Well, I mean a liar. I'm not a liar, I mean a lawyer. Should never take my word for anything. Should always do your own research. I have provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? You think about it. What's a slave? A slave is someone who is forced to work for nothing. So if you are forced to pay taxes, well, then they're forcing you to work for the government for nothing, or for whoever you're paying the taxes to. Right. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that's a slave. That's slavery. You're forced to work for them for nothing. Matter of fact, in my first case, I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, and in my first case, that's what I said, is this is slavery. You're forcing me to work for the government for nothing. And I sued the IRS. I sued the IRS. That was my first case. And I've actually sued the IRS and took it to the Supreme Court twice. And they don't want to talk to me now. And I kind of like it that way, And so they don't ask, and I don't tell. You remember on the Clinton administration, it was for the gays in the military, right? Don't ask, don't tell. Well, IRS doesn't ask, I don't tell. I don't volunteer or anything.
So nothing since that time? You haven't had any issues at all?
No. Wow. No, but I also do other things. Okay. Like, for example, you have to understand that first of all, you have to understand that, and we'll talk about this today, but when you use these things don't pay anything. That's why we use the Form 1020. These things don't pay anything. What they do is they discharge debt with limited liability. Okay? And they're sending you a letter or something saying pay, right? This is the power of the Form 1020. I'm telling you, this is really slick. Kerry Zulman came up with this, and he's brilliant. But, so what I do on my order forms, if you look here, cost each, it'll say 5, and it'll have a star there, or 6, or 3. And if you look at the star, you go down to the star, it says the preferred method of payments by pieces of silver, 1 troy ounce each, pure silver. As a less desirable alternative, I can accept the commercial paper, cash, legal tender, money order, and military script, I don't have that there, or email money transfer. If you need to make it payable, use Glenfern or leave it blank. For PayPal gifts, send it to, and I have engineerwin at Hotmail, or for Bitcoin, contact me at engineerwin@yahoo.com. And so, anyways, so it says cost 5 each, and then it says under the description, it says if paying by commercial paper, it's $100. So I valued the silver at $20 a coin. And so I might have to adjust this now that silver's going up. But so I've had people send me emails, taxman@gmail, wanting my order form, right?
Yeah.
So no problem, I sent it to them. And I never hear back, they never order anything. But, and I think that they're trying to build a case. And then when I send them this is a privilege. When you use Federal Reserve notes, that's a privilege. There's a Supreme Court case called U.S. versus Carlisle from 1875.
Right.
It says that everyone not privileged is sovereign. And so the privilege is discharging debt with limited liability. That's a privilege. You're not paying it. You're discharging debt with limited liability. So I'm saying there that I prefer not to use your Federal Reserve notes. So it's not a privilege anymore. You're coercing me into it because that's what everybody else uses. And so it's not a privilege anymore. And that's why they never mess with me.
What I've started doing to identify that is state that it's the doctrine of necessity.
Sure,
'Cause
same thing.
You have no choice.
You're being forced into it.
Right.
Absolutely. Same thing. Anyways, so if you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. And I don't know how many people have seen The Matrix, but that's a shot taken from The Matrix. It's a good movie. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights, and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. And if you think about it, that's exactly what they did, you know? And all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government is not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So I've successfully used the Form 1020 for judgments, bank debt, property taxes, IRS taxes, toll road tolls. If you, I think you can use the Form 1020 for any government debt or corporate debt. Again, because they all have bar members, they all have lawyers. And we're going to talk about that. The Form 1020, there's a case called Brown versus Franchise Tax Board, talks about Federal Reserve notes, essentially says that you cannot pay a debt with a debt. The Form 1020 says you want to lawfully pay the debt. It's impossible to pay a debt with Federal Reserve notes. And I've never seen them complete form. And it says on the form that you have to get a lawyer, only a lawyer can fill out the form, and you need their bar card number, and that creates a problem for them. This is 18 U.S.C. Section 8, obligation or other security of the United States defined. The term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificates of indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons, United States notes, Treasury notes, gold certificates, silver certificates, fractional notes, certificates of deposit, bills, checks, or drafts for money, drawn by or upon authorized officers of the United States, stamps, and other representatives of value of whatever denomination issued under any act of Congress, and canceled United States stamps are even though they're canceled. Still an obligation. And under Title 31 U.S.C. 3124, it says that stocks and obligations to the United States government are exempt from taxation by a state or political subdivision of a state. This exemption applies to each form of taxation that would require the obligation, the interest on the obligation, or both to be considered in computing a tax, except a non-discriminatory franchise tax or other non-property tax instead of a franchise tax imposed on a corporation, and an estate or inheritance tax. So again, so they're supposed to be exempt from taxation. So that's why they spell your name. That's why they use the SSK Trust, because that's a corporation under 15 U.S.C. Section 44, and we might go through that here. Anyways, there's no lawful money in general circulation since 1965. Under the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, it says no state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debts. And so, and there's been no lawful money in circulation, in general circulation, since 1965. Under the Uniform Commercial Code, this is Texas Business and Commerce Code, but it's basically Uniform Commercial Code, says money means a medium of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government. The term includes a monetary unit of account established by an intergovernmental organization or by agreement between two or more countries. So money under international law is unconstitutional. A party under the Texas Business and Commerce Code, party as distinguished from a third party means a person that's engaged in a transaction, so you're talking commercial by definition, or made an agreement subject to this title. So again, a party is commercial. It all falls under the Uniform Commercial Code. At common law, only gold and silver are legal tender. Now that is actually a court case from 1820, but it's citing Book 2 on the Institutes of Laws of England. That's what this is right here. That's Coke from the 1500s. So this is as old as time itself. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. These lawyers lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. Anyways, copies of these documents can be found in my private group. Well, this is all going to change. On my website. The Yahoo group is being shut down by Yahoo in December. So I've got a bunch of stuff up on my website. This won't be up there for a while. At some point I'm going to have to add a bunch of stuff. I've got a webmaster, so I try and make as little work for him as possible. And he's pretty good, and I really like what he does. But so at some point I'll send it to him. If somebody wants all of these videos, there's going to be a PDF file. So if somebody wants the PDF, I can email it to you. So send me an email. I'll send you the PDF. When you communicate with me, I get literally hundreds of emails every day. So make sure you tell me that you were at here, and I'll give you a little more attention than I would otherwise. Okay? If people, I got canned responses for most people that contact me out of the blue. Anyways, for a complete set of YouTube videos and private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin. See again, remember, it's not a privilege. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the fake money, the military script, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. So this is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. Section 15 is used in this act. The term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. So think about it. They're for the District of Columbia and the territories only. Now, as Nelson, he was here earlier. He's the guy that is hosting this whole thing. He's kind of busy with doing some other stuff right now, so he's not able to attend. But he is in the New Jersey Constitution, and I can just about guarantee you every other constitution is the same thing. But in the state of New Jersey Constitution, it talks about territory. So that's territorial. They're talking about the territory. So there's a state of New Jersey, which is a corporation that's a territory in the United States, and then there's New Jersey State, and that is we the people. And the de jure, matter of fact, if you go to the Definitive Treaty of Peace, let's do a search for Definitive Treaty of Peace. Article 1, His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States. In other words, and he lists them. New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay. So those are the United States. Each one is a state. So then it would be New Hampshire State, Massachusetts Bay State, Rhode Island State, Connecticut State, New York State, New Jersey State. Anyways. So it doesn't say state of New Jersey.
No, I noticed it says United States in capitals.
It does.
Rather than lowercase u.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff about this treaty, actually. Matter of fact, Nelson was pointing out and that some of the states refused to ratify the Articles of Confederation until they gave up their claim to territory that was east of the Ohio River, or west of the Ohio River. Which is very interesting, because it was west of the Ohio River that this gives to the United States, the King of England gives to the United States, creates all this federal territory, and there's Chom, and there's some other people that have been to this event before, think that was a Trojan horse that was put in to create federal power and this federal territory. Anyways, it's certainly food for thought. So, yeah, we can talk. I'm going to keep this up because we're going to talk about more about this. So, anyways, it's federal territory. Federal Reserve notes are meant for federal territory. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. They're a forced loan. They're IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. A requirement for a promissory note is it has to have a promise to pay. And so if you look at them, there's no promise to pay. It used to have that you could go get some gold or silver. Doesn't anymore. So that was the promise. And so now they're just an IOU. So some guy promised to pay me, and when he pays me, I'll pay you. You know, essentially is what you're doing. Matter of fact, whenever a lot of times I'll go into any time actually when I go to spend them, I'll tell the clerk, I'll say all I got is this IOU, and they'll kind of laugh. You know, I think that they kind of, because it is a bit of a, they don't realize that it really is an IOU, and so a lot of times I'll go through and explain. You know, that it's commercial paper, and then there's either commercial papers, I don't care, stocks, bonds, whatever. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. Anyways, so they learn something. You know, the idea is to try and educate people, you know. Anyways, Even gold and silver certificates or promissory notes, they're still commercial paper. Commercial paper. They're still discharging debt with limited liability. They're not paying the debt. It's only with gold or silver coins can you pay the debt. This is Libra Code. Forced loans. They're forced loans, what they are. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, to billet soldiers, or to appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, or ships, and churches for temporary and military uses. That's Article 37 of the Libra Code. Chisholm versus Georgia. This is 1794 or something like that, 1796. Anyways, in despotic governments, the government has usurped in a similar manner both upon the state and the people, hence all arbitrary doctrines and pretensions concerning the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable power of government in each man is degraded from the prime rank which he ought to hold in human affairs. In the latter, the state as well as the man is degraded. In both degradations, striking instances occur in history, in politics, and in common life. So cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. One thing I was suggesting that we could do, I don't know if you guys are interested, we could go on a Bitcoin field trip and buy some cryptocurrencies if you want to see how it's done. It's up to you. I'd have a little class. If you want to do that, we can do that. And there's ways. What I do is and we'll talk about that another time, but that's certainly an option. Maybe we can talk about that at lunch or something. Anything can be used as a medium of exchange as long as you agree to it. It's called barter. The forced loans of 1863 and 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. So again, national supremacy, forced loans. So if you're using Federal Reserve notes in New Jersey, then you're in the state of New Jersey, not in New Jersey State. There's two jurisdictions here right now. One's a corporate jurisdiction under international law. The other one is the de jure entity that joined the Confederacy, the Union. And in fact, in the preamble for the act to extend the laws of the United States over the state of Texas, it says that Texas has joined the Confederacy and the Union. Specifically says that. So that tells me the Confederacy was still alive.
Where did it show that?
Huh?
Where did it say that?
In the preamble, and Texas joined the Union in 1845.
Okay.
And in the preamble to that act, it's at 9 Stat 1. Okay, it's page 1 of Book 9 of the Statutes at Large. It says, it's the first act in the book. It says that Texas has joined the Confederacy and the Union. Two separate entities. Anyways. During the Civil War, they paid government employees with treasury notes. Okay, that's where the forced loans are. During the government employees were forced to loan the government for money. Think about it. That's what they're doing. When government employees are paid treasury notes or bank notes, it's a forced loan. Both are government debts. So that's why they can only, like for the stimulus and all the rest of the stuff, you got to give them a Social Security number. You got to do it through the IRS. Okay? They're not just going to go and, it's all done through the IRS.
No free lunch.
Well, it's for government employees.
That's true.
Also for the
Anybody
accounting as well.
under Title V, United States Code, I don't know if we'll cover that in here, might. 552 AA 13, it says that federal personnel is anybody that has a Social Security number. So, if you got a Social Security number, then you're federal personnel.
Straw man, anyway.
Well, that's right. You don't have No man or woman has a Social Security number. That was one of the things I brought up in my first case to the Supreme Court. I went and submitted an affidavit, said, I don't have a Social Security number. I've never had a Social Security number. No problem. No man or woman has one. Anyways, forced loans is probably the single most important thing for military despotism. Okay, they cannot have, that brings you into international law. Military martial law is international law. And forced loans bring you into international law. And so there's court cases that talk about how there's no law of nations between the people of the United States and their government. So again, if you want to be the people, you got to use gold or silver coin. You got to have, ideally you should have absolute title to land, but you certainly have to use gold or silver coin, or at least have something showing that that's what you want to use. And that creates a problem for them. It makes it so the courts can presume that you're under military jurisdiction, under international law. These commercial paper falls under international law. The Roman law. I've got a set of books at home called Roman Law in America. And all mortgages fall under Roman law. I don't know if you know that or not, but they do. All negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. That's why the courts want you to pay a fee. Okay, you gotta show them that you're in Roman law. They don't have jurisdiction otherwise. Even if they penalize you, it's all in Roman law. It's all in Roman law. We're being imposed Roman law is international law. Or international law is Roman law. I'm not sure which, quite frankly. But it could all be tied back to the Roman cult, is where it's tied back to. I mean, that's all. We're looking at the book of Revelations time period right now. There's a lot of people are saying that. I think that might be true. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. Debt is the money of slaves. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged. This is Carlisle versus United States. I was telling you about this earlier. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein. So these are using words out of the Bible. This is as old as time itself. In Leviticus it says, you should treat the stranger in the land as one born in the land, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they enslaved the children of Israel in Egypt. They were strangers. And yet, with the Social Security number, we volunteered to be strangers. That's essentially what's going on, or the equivalent of strangers. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. So, Nelson, I wish he was here right now, because he actually read that case and he can tell you what it was about. I guess there was some people in Atlanta that were from England, and they owned a potash mine, and the Confederacy was buying potash from them. And then when the Confederacy was, basically beat in the war, the Confederacy owed them some money, and so they sued the United States. And the Supreme Court said the United States had to pay them. And that's why I think it goes to the war reparations that the United States, even today, when they go in to some country, they have to do war reparations, have to clean up afterwards. You see what I'm saying? That's probably tied to that case. Anyways, it's kind of interesting. Nelson was talking about it.
I see a lot of words there that we don't like these days, such as resident, permanent residence.
Right. Well, again, that's all international law. It falls under international law. Residence is international law. Strangers are out of the Bible, right? You're right.
Domicile's another one.
Right.
But
Yes.
abode, maybe, that's
Right.
not too bad.
Right.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. This is 1873. So there was some really interesting court cases around there that we still use today. Federal Reserve notes were set up under the insurance laws of the United States. The Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. It's all international law. It's a private money system.
Taxes, incidentally, from my investigations in about 2008, 2009, were literally the fee to pay the interest on what termed the national debt, which is actually the money supply. That's what the national debt is, it's the money supply.
Yeah,
If you pay off the national debt, there's no money.
that's right. That's true. There's actually cites from Federal Reserve officials that say that if the national debt was paid off, there'd be no money in circulation.
Mind you, of course, there's never enough money anyway because the interest is always charged on top of what was issued.
Right.
You know, the national debt, the debt portion of it.
Yeah.
So there's you can't. It's impossible to pay both the national debt that was issued plus the interest that was.
That's
demanded.
right. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. It's impossible
It's
because
impossible.
they didn't issue the money to pay the interest.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I used to do when I did speaking with oral engagements when I was describing all of this, because the way they do it on a one-to-one, that's an impossibility. Just for argument's sake, they issue $100,000 and they want $105,000 paid back. On a one-to-one, that's impossible. You can't do it because where does the 5,000 come from?
Right.
Now,
Right.
you times that by 200 million people,
That's right.
and it's possible, but it means that one person's going to get his 5,000 to pay back the bank, another guy isn't.
Another guy's going
And he's
bankrupt.
going bankrupt. So
That's
that's,
right.
why people go bankrupt through
That's
no
right.
fault of their own.
So it's literally
it's an
a,
impossibility for you to repay that money.
it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
That's how they keep it all going.
Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. Google has locked me out of my YouTube channel and my email and my Google group. They're all associated with one email address, and they've locked me out of it. They haven't shut any of it down. It's still up. It's just that I can't get access to it. So we'll see what happens with that. They're saying they can't verify it's me.
Not because you're trying to access from a different state than usual.
Whatever. I never had any trouble before.
No, it's just, I know they're putting
I think
lots
they're
of
just
other,
being jerks.
yeah, they're putting lots of other policies in.
What
place.
happened is they were calling a bunch of my videos not suitable for children, and I was responding. They wanted my response, and my response was, everything you do, I'm building a case against you, and I'm going to sue your butt off. I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times. All your executive officers and board of directors are personally liable in their private capacity, so go ahead, do whatever you're going to do. It's all evidence.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's when they did that. So, anyways, there's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already clicked. The bell is not clicked. It would look like it's vibrating if it was. So this is a form that was developed by Kerry on the jurisdiction conference call that's sponsored by the Republic of Texas. This form number is a form number that Kerry gave it. Okay, it's any old number you want to use. Okay, you can use any number you want. Under Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, a form is a legal document with blank spaces to be filled in by the drafter. Okay, legal document to be used in court. So this is the form right here. That's the first page. So we'll get in a little closer. So this is the one I sent to the IRS, and where they had, what happened was American Engineering Services didn't file for tax year 2015. That was 1 year. I've been out of work since 2012, but 2015 I actually had a contract for about 6 weeks, and so there was someone that reported income to American Engineering Services in that time period, and so and I didn't bother filing. Probably should have, but anyways I didn't. And so they sent me, they were doing their administrative procedure, going to do a commercial lien, and so they were, you know, certified mail and all the stuff that the IRS does. And so for a long time, they just sent me notices, we're finding you this $450 because you didn't file, and I just ignored it. But then they started doing the 30 days, every 30 days they were sending it, right? So for 2 or 3 years, they just sent me every year, they'd send me the notice. But then they started every 30 days sending me and so that's when I used the Form 1020. I actually sent it to them in January. If you look here, January 27th. And so let's get in a little closer. Oh, no.
Now, Glenn, they would send you something stating that, quote, you owe them something.
Yeah.
For you to respond to this, but
It was a penalty, a fine for not filing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was from obviously it came from an individual agent then?
Well, that's always from an individual agent.
Right, that's true, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is you have to realize you're not fighting against some big unnamed faceless bureaucracy. It's some guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, this is the one that I sent. An attorney or private corporation is assumed to know the law. It's the obligation of an attorney or private corporation to see that any alleged taxes are collected lawfully, correctly, and completely. In order to correctly, quote, pay this alleged taxes, American Engineering Services requires the following information from attorneys at the IRS. Complete this form and return it to the address you have on file to enable American Engineering Services to understand and lawfully comply with these alleged taxes. This form raises formal questions regarding to these alleged taxes, and only your attorneys can answer. Under the caption, amount due by January 9, 2020, what does the number 45622 refer to? Check 1, obligations of the United States government, national bank currency, bonds, certificates of indebtedness, Federal Reserve notes, bills, other. Explain. Does the statement refer to consideration of obligations or other securities of the United States directly or indirectly? Check 1, yes or no. Does the computation of these alleged taxes require consideration of obligations or other securities of the United States directly or indirectly? Check 1, yes or no. It's pretty straightforward.
Just going back to that, obviously you changed the form to suit the taxes.
Of course. Yeah,
So
everyone's
the word-
customized.
Yeah, so you would have to change that if somebody was sending you a demand for payment for something else.
Exactly.
So then obviously you would change
It
it
could
to
be,
describe what that was.
This one says taxes, right? So if it was like fines, then you put in fines.
Yeah.
Right? Fines, taxes, whatever, okay? Most individuals can complete this form in 3 minutes. You're required by law to complete this form before any payment can be made. As a private corporation, you're assumed to know the law and not misleading. You made several statements in your notice, CP 160, to American Engineering Services, that American Engineering Services owes something to someone. It is your obligation to answer the foregoing questions on Form 1020 or a default will be issued by American Engineering Services against Internal Revenue Service, a private corporation, for trying to mislead American Engineering Services by asking American Engineering Services for something that fails to be owed, or you don't know what that something is. So as attorneys, you're assumed to know the law. And this is the page 2 of the form. It's pretty simple. It says, let's see if it goes bigger. Yes, it does. Says, I'm an attorney at Internal Revenue Service, a private corporation. I've read the foregoing Form 1020 and know it to be true, correct, complete, and not misleading in any way. I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Executed on this date, print name, sign name, bar number. They all have an oath of office. It creates a major problem for them, I guarantee you. This Form 1020 must be completed and returned within 15 days of mailing and /delivery/filing. Failure to complete and return this Form 1020 in 15 days will result in a default being prepared for Internal Revenue Service based on the information Internal American Engineering Services has, and the default is your admittance that the tax which was provided to American Engineering Services was in error or in violation of the law, nor the mailing will be needed. Failure to provide American Engineering Services with requested information in the time allowed, the attorneys of Internal Revenue Service are admitting with their silence that Internal Revenue Service is dishonest. Estoppel arises where a person is under duty to another to speak, or failure to speak is inconsistent with honest dealings. Silence by Internal Revenue Service will be treated by American Engineering Services that taxes are dishonest dealings and balance is paid in full.
Wow.
So anyways, it's short and sweet, 2 pages. It's real simple. It's brilliant, I tell you. Anyways, I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies, $29.99 a year for the videos only, $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I meant an attorney. No, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. So if you want to do a donation if you want to buy a subscription as a donation, it's a modest donation, there's no doubt about it, but everything's appreciated, and it all helps. Some of my stuff on my exclusive content is Arlington Private Information Share, which is 9 videos by itself. Land deed training, there's 2 or 3 videos of that. Estoppel certificates training, foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation signature training, third-party witness training, and federal habeas corpus training. Revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training, there's several of those, there'll probably be more. Lawsuit training, there's 1 of those and there's going to be more. Lawsuits get kind of complicated. Other training requests, Northeast Private Information Share videos. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free. On my website, let's go on back out of that. All exclusive content is available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. This is what the IRS responded with.
So just a brief question, I guess. The Form 1020 is what would you previously probably would have equated to a debt validation letter of some sort, or some of the debt validation letters were more than 2 pages.
No,
a bit of a
no,
process
you're not
for-
disputing the debt at all. You're saying, no problem, I'll pay it, tell me what to pay.
Well, the debt validation isn't necessarily a dispute, it's just validated to me, and
Yeah.
I'll pay it. It's,
Yeah.
amounts to the same thing, but...
Well, a debt
Probably.
validation letter is kind of like a conditional acceptance, which is what he did with the,
Mhm.
you see what I'm saying?
Taxes, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is not even disputing it at all, Tell me what to pay, I'll pay it.
All right. Yeah.
They'll never tell you. Anyways, so this is the letter they sent me. It took a while. They actually sent me a couple letters saying that, because it was during the coronavirus hoax stuff, eh?
Yeah.
So they sent me a couple letters, said they're working on it, you know? Anyways, so this is the letter they sent. It says, we approved your request to remove the penalties.
Well, I don't remember you requesting to remove the penalties.
I offered to pay.
Right.
However, we only granted penalty relief because you have a good history of filing and paying on time. This type of penalty, see, it's a Form 1065, okay? You got to understand. And if we go through anything about trusts, you know, we'll see about that. The Form 1065 is a reporting tax return only. It never pays. And it just says that it reports, and the partners in the LLC are this and whoever. You see what I'm saying? And so then their tax liability or tax loss goes to by percentages based on the amount of ownership in the LLC. So anyway, so they never paid anything, but they did file when I was working. I mean, my best year, I made just short of 200,000, you know, or American Engineering Services did. But so, anyways, however, we only granted penalty relief because you have a good history of filing and paying on time. This type of penalty removal is only available one time. We'll base our decisions to remove any future penalties on reasonable cause criteria. The balance due on your account was not due to past due tax. It was due to a penalty charge for late filing of your Form 1065. We've removed the penalty and you'll receive a notice regarding the status of your account. Okay, and this is it blown up. That's it. Thank you for your cooperation. Anyways, so that's it. That was their response. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International is being deleted. That's on Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook in a long time. And so, you know, I don't even go there. Let's do this. This groups.io is shut down because they didn't like the topics we were talking about. Follow me on Twitter. Okay, so my Yahoo private group is Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. That's going to be shut down in December. My Google group is Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter, Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit. Follow me on BitChute at Sovereignty International, although I don't have a lot of videos there because they limit you to 500 megabytes. And a lot of my videos are bigger than that, so I haven't uploaded anything to BitChute in a long time. I'm actually on Library, and let's put a link for that. There we go. So, I'm on the Library. And the library is associated with my YouTube channel, so everything that's on YouTube is available on library. And then my Patreon is Sovereignty International. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 5, Do-It-Yourself, How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself, No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself, Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself, Kangaroo Courts. Actually, there's 19 of those now. Canada Border Pigs playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections playlist. So under the Form 1020, this is Uniform Commercial Code 3-603. If tender of a payment or of an obligation to pay an instrument is made to a person entitled to enforce the instrument and the tender is refused, there is discharge. Okay, so if they don't honor your tender payment, then it's discharged, it's done. To the extent of the amount of the tender or the obligation of an endorser or accommodation party having a right of recourse with respect to the obligation to which the tender relates. So in other words, if they're sending you a bill, if it's a mortgage and they're sending you a bill for $700 and the balance on the mortgage is $50,000, and you do the Form 1020 on the $700, well then the $700 is discharged, the rest of the balance is still due. See what I'm saying? Anyways, once you build your case and collect your evidence, use it to file judicial complaints and bar complaints. And there's some of them, they don't cave in as quick as IRS did in this case. Sometimes you have to you build a case and you file complaints against the bar attorneys or against whoever you're dealing with. All of these corporations have attorneys. So what I do automatically is I'll find out who the chief counsel is for this corporation that I'm dealing with, and I'll copy the chief counsel in on the Form 1020. And what I do is, and it doesn't show it here, I didn't do it in this case, but is I do a notice of default after 15 days. I send them a notice of default, an opportunity to cure, and it's basically, I'll show you an example of that. Yeah, so you file judicial complaints and bar complaints. I like to show up in municipal court and get the name of their attorney so I have a name to file bar complaints against. I definitely find out who the lawyer is. There's all sorts of ways you can do that. You can call them up, be real nice. You can just show up and be real nice. Yeah, who's the city attorney? I can't find it on the website. Or just be real nice. A lot of these clerks, they're idiots and they don't have a clue. And so, and you just be nice to them, and a lot of times you'll get all sorts of information out of them. Sometimes I file my nastygrams and make sure and copy everybody and their brother into it. We might go through a nastygram here. We'll see. I don't do a lot of those, but I do them sometimes. So I consider myself a watchman, but if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned that the sword come, and take any person from among them, he's taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. And either you're part of the problem, you're part of the solution, you are now a watchman, circulate this video far and wide, at some point we'll all be forced to do something. And so then what I want to do is, this is also very similar. I'll show you some let's do this. Okay, this is Form 1020, the second one that I sent. It's a default right here. What I do is you send it all by certified mail. See, and so this one, so what I did was I went and filed them with the clerk the first time. Okay, and I let it sit for 15 days, and they didn't respond. So then I sent them the notice of default, and the judge was the Sarah Jane Del Carmen, and the court administrator, and the prosecutor. And so you're in default of providing a method of payment. You're notified that your attorneys have failed to complete this form that was filed on the 24th of January. I'd attach a copy of the form. Okay, and it had the file stamp on it. This is an effort to pay a debt. I need to know how to lawfully satisfy the requirement. I've attached a copy for your reference. I've been receiving your threatening mail, which demonstrates that you intend to conspire together. This is all words in felony statutes, federal felony statutes, right? To threaten me, coerce me, oppress me, and injure me in the free exercise of my right to lawfully take care of this matter, since you're saying I owe you something. Your Texas codes require a capias, but a capias is not a warrant. This has given me great evidence against you and your Deer Park cash cow handlers, and your intent to engage in multiple felonies, official oppression, mail fraud, sending threatening mail, impersonation, perjury, both and more. Have a great day!
I love it.
And I don't sign anything, it's just got the name printed there, okay?
Yeah,
Nothing's
yeah,
ever
right.
signed.
Right.
And so then, damn.
Now you sent all these certified as opposed to saying it registered then? But
Sorry?
everything you send is certified, you don't send it registered in this case?
Certified, yeah, but this stuff is certified.
This stuff, okay.
Yeah, registered's expensive.
I know.
It costs you a lot of money to
I
say.
know.
Anyways, this is the final default. Oh, well, let's actually let's do this.
Now this would both
This
be...
is the PDF, so I'll show you how I put all the package together. Okay?
Okay. Now each of these are on that site, the subscription site, that's correct, under...
If they're not, send me an email, I'll send it to you. Some of the files get quite large. Okay, so this is the notice of default and opportunity to cure. And this is the original Form 1020 that I sent them. See, here's the filed stamp. This is the conviction in their kangaroo court. This is their warrant notification, which is really a capias. And this is the tracking certified mail.
Mhm.
That's to Karen Randolph, the clerk. This is to Del Carmen. I don't know why one of them's so big and the other one's so small, but they are. Anyways, this is to the judge, and this is to the prosecutor.
Hmm.
That's the default that I sent them.
Okay.
Okay? And then the final default wonder why there's 3 of them there. Let's see what this one is. Final notice of default sent by certified mail. You're in default of providing a method of payment. You were notified that your attorneys have failed to complete this form that was filed on January 24th. Actually, final notice of default. Let's go back to these other ones. Oh, here's the tracking. Okay, that's what that is. Okay. Oh, there we go. This is the way it would have been. You're in default of providing a method of payment. You're notified that your attorneys have failed to complete this form that was filed on 24th of January. A notice of default and opportunity to cure was served on you on the 24th of February. You failed to respond to that as well, Karen Randolph. So they were all served it on that day, and this is the certified mail numbers. True copies of proof of service are attached here too, all of which are incorporated herein by reference in its entirety. This is an effort to pay a debt. I need to know how to lawfully satisfy this requirement. I've attached a copy for your reference. I've been receiving your threatening mail, which demonstrates you intend to conspire together to threaten me, coerce me, oppress me, injure me in the free exercise of my right and it's not a warrant. Your capias is not a warrant. This is final notice of default, and your failure to provide the required mentions. Information means I owe nothing. Have a great day. And so then I attach the notice of default, and here's the original Form 1020, and here's the verdict in their kangaroo court, and here is the warrant notice, and here is this is on the February 24th, so that's the first one that I sent, and then this one is February 24th, yeah, that's February 24th. So that's only one of them, and the other one is...
So if that was a court case, Glenn,
Yeah, it was, yeah.
so you
Traffic
filed
court.
each of those?
Traffic
every
court.
time?
Huh?
You filed with the court each time?
Oh, yeah. Sent them by certified mail. Here's the final... Okay, so this is what I need to do. I need to...
Wait a minute, I'm saying, you said it was a traffic matter?
Oh, you can use them anything where they say you have to pay something.
Okay.
You
No,
got
but
to
this-
understand, though,
Mhm.
that there are a bunch of thieves and pirates,
Right.
and so they might send their hired thugs out to assault you anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With their fake warrant. But again, it all builds a case. This Adobe Pro is such a piece of junk. It crashes all the time. Anyways, I'm not going to mess with it right now. That's it. And that's all the package that I put together showing the service and all that stuff. And so that's the Form 10. Oh, there's another thing I want to go through.
Okay, so you've only started using this yourself this year? That was the first, you,
No, that was last year when I was doing that, I think.
okay. And you use it for how many different type of things besides traffic use?
Any time of, I've used it with credit cards, and even with the credit cards, I think it would have worked, except that it was $300, and I didn't want my credit report to start showing negative stuff because I was trying to do something at the time, and so I just paid it. But I think you could use it on credit cards, on anything.
So if someone sends you a utility bill,
You could. You got to understand, they might cut off your utilities.
That's what I mean.
As
yeah.
long as you're communicating, I don't have a utility bill that I can use it with.
Okay.
This is another thing that's related. That this is actually taken from a friend of mine in Arkansas gave me a audio file from a conference call, and this is what I transcribed from that audio file. This is a guy in Texas. But this will explain in another way why the Form 1020 works. Okay? So this is another way that's doing the same thing, another way of approaching it. And this guy in Texas, he got it to the point that the prosecutors would just come to him and say, you have any problems, you just contact me, I'll make it go away for you. They didn't want him bringing this stuff up in court.
No.
Okay? And here's why. So we'll read this thing. There's actually, he said in that conference call that he has 3 affidavits or 3 motions that he files, depending on what's going on and everything. But he has 3 of them that he files, and so this is kind of like all 3 of them in here in one document. Anyways, he says that under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 states that no state will make anything but gold or silver in a tender and a payment of debt. All bar members take an oath to support and defend the Constitution and I do not have any contracts with the state or federal government or any bar member or officer of this court, and I don't waive any rights specifically related to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And so the declaration made by the U.S. Congress at 31 U.S.C. 5101 clearly states that no court has decided the value of money, and rightly so. United States money, this is 31 U.S.C. 5101. United States money is expressed in dollars, dimes, or tenths, and cents, or hundreds, and mils, or thousandths. A dime is a tenth of a dollar, a cent is a hundredth of a dollar, and a mil is a thousandth of a dollar. The value of money is a political question and cannot be addressed by the court. All questions concerning the nature of money, this is a way of basically letting the judge off the hook. Okay? All questions concerning the nature of money are political questions and cannot be addressed by any court. There are three things involved in any demand for money. First is the value of the money. Congress declares that there has been no decisions on the value of money or money of account. See 31 U.S.C. 5101, which I already quoted. Second, the Constitution of the United States, as Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 states, no state shall make anything but gold or silver, a coin, a tender, and a payment of debts. This article of the Constitution operates to restrict the court from ordering any payment made on any other form than gold or silver coin. They cannot order you to pay anything but gold or silver coin. And third, the absence of gold or silver in general circulation operates in a manner that creates a political question as to whether I can be compelled to accept legal prejudice by using or accepting any form of money other than gold or silver coin. And that's true. Okay, there's this Clearfield Trust Company versus when you use Federal Reserve notes, you become a slave. You go into international law, you lose your sovereignty. That's a privilege. Remember the Carlisle versus United States. That's legal prejudice. So the second argument in this case, so that's the first one.
Now, who's the gentleman who came up with this other method?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. You just put down
It's just an audio program that was a conference call and that somebody recorded it, and I just transcribed it.
Okay.
I mean, I had to go back and repeat it a whole bunch of times, so I got it all written down properly.
So what are you putting this under? What category would this be under, this information call?
It's the same thing as the Form 1020. It's just another, you could incorporate this into a motion to dismiss.
Okay.
And because they have a he calls it a conundrum. We have a conundrum here.
Yeah.
I guess it's an explanation of the Form 1020 as well, really.
It is. It does. It explains why the Form 1020 works. Anyways, the second argument in this case that stops the court from even ruling in this matter is a problem that has been generated by a conflict between the statutes created by Congress of the United States and the Constitution of the United States. This conflict is reflected in the policy of the state of Texas and how the said conflict operates against my political position as a beneficiary of the Paramount Trust, created by the Constitution of the United States. Here are the players at this party. First there's me, who's a beneficiary of the Paramount Trust created by the Constitution of the United States and has never knowingly and with intent waived any of the rights or protection of my beneficial position. Then there's the judge in this matter, where he or she is the trustee of the Paramount Trust due to the oath taken to support and defend the Paramount Trust. Then there's the prosecutor who has taken an oath to protect and defend the Paramount Trust and is also an officer of the court. This was over a city ticket. Anyways, then there's the employee or agent of the city who is as a peace officer has taken an oath to protect and defend the Paramount Trust and is as a co-trustee. These conditions operate to place the judge in this matter, the prosecutor for the city and employee in the unique position of making sure that I'm granted all of my protections under the Paramount Trust. Otherwise, the trustee or co-trustee commits perjury of oath, which is a very serious crime in Texas. The ability of the city to collect for a violation of this matter turns on political choices and rights available to me and generated in the Paramount Trust cited in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. Congress of the United States has created certain statutes which conflict with the Paramount Trust. Of those statutes were made without authority, and those statutes were made without authority. This statutes operate to remove gold or silver coin from circulation and used by beneficiaries of the Paramount Trust. The removal of gold and silver coin caused citizens to have to make the political choice to either waive their protection under the Paramount Trust and use an authorized form of payment for day-to-day debts to the government, or have no money of exchange to provide for their life. This is like really slick the way this does. He does it real nice. Anyways, the money system moved forward by way of ignorance of the citizens, even though in the form of payment authorized by the Paramount Trust, still today is gold or silver coin. This set of circumstances operates to create a political choice for me when dealing with any political subdivision of the state, including the city. I would be forced to waive my rights and protections created by the Paramount Trust for my benefit and agree to deal with government in an unauthorized and therefore illegal form of exchange, that I could come to this court and demand that the trustees and co-trustees sworn to defend my rights and protections set out in the conditions of the Paramount Trust do their sworn duty. Thereby trustees and sworn oaths could avoid the peril of becoming conflicted trustees and committing perjury of oath. All courts are aware that all aspects of money are political. Congress has exclusive control over the value and creation of money. However, the form of money is controlled by the conditions set forth in the Paramount Trust. Therefore, issued such as these such as these raised by me are non-justiciable political subject, and outside are in other words, it's not something that can be decided by a court, are non-justiciable political subject and outside the jurisdiction of this or any other court. At this juncture in this matter, the court has the opportunity to either operate the court for my benefit as a beneficiary of the Paramount Trust, or commit perjury of oath and operate the court pursuant to some other rules created by a secondary spin-off trust that was generated by some United States banking emergency and bankruptcy back in the 1930s. He's referring to the bankruptcy. That continues to this day. Since the court is stopped by Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution from generating any order that would order me to pay anything in Federal Reserve notes or bank notes, there is no set of facts that the government can present that would allow the city to receive the relief for which they are seeking. Therefore, I'm entitled to have this matter dismissed in summary judgment. And then the last one here is, there is another legal set of circumstances that are quite compelling and presented with the liabilities that run against the state when the system is run contrary to the conditions set out in the Paramount Trust. So then it goes on into this other part here. Currently, the state of Texas is operating its day-to-day. This is only a 5-page document. It's like short and sweet. Anyways, currently the state of Texas is operating its day-to-day operations, including the court system, outside the requirements of Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution of the United States. Since the United States Congress has removed gold in 1933 and silver from circulation since January 1st, 1965, and the Constitution of the United States has not changed with reference to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, a conflict of law has been continually in place. That's true. For the court to continue to operate with some appearance to provide justice, the judges have the judge has to be provided with some shield from operating totally outside the supreme law of the land. Since January 1965, there has been technically no lawful money in general circulation. The courts, in order to give the appearance of providing justice, has to move to a strictly commercial venue, which is international law. Okay, so they're taking you into international law with the commercial venue, right? Uniform Commercial Code, Federal Reserve notes, all that stuff. The commercial venue was provided by the Uniform Commercial Code. The UCC, by way of definition of money, provided in the Texas Business and Commerce Code, see, and this is something I showed in the presentation, provides that the court with the form of shield by utilizing a presumption. Money means a medium of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government. The term includes monetary unit of account established by an intergovernmental organization or by agreement between two or more countries. The UCC provides that the purpose of the UCC is to permit the continued expansion of commercial practices through customs usages and agreement of the parties. And here's where the rub begins. The court depends on me to stay silent about this set of circumstances and let the court make the presumption that I accept the position of party as defined in the business code. Okay, this Uniform Commercial Code in Texas. Party as distinguished from third party means a person is engaged in a transaction. It's all commercial. That I agree to accept the definition of money and move forward with this transaction. Since I have not entered into this transaction or made any agreements with the state or the city or the police or the court, this corporate city court, the cop, or the judge in this matter, I will provide an affidavit to that effect. So right now it's just a motion, no affidavits. Under those circumstances, the court will not be able to utilize presumption of party or money against me. My affidavit will shift the burden to the prosecutor to bring forth some non-existent contract that indicated that I did with intent waive my protections under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, to pay debts to the state with gold or silver coin. At that juncture of the matter, the court will no longer be able to utilize presumption that this matter will go forward with me as a party as defined in the UCC and under the definition of money as also defined in the UCC. Once the presumptions of the court are controverted, and I claim my rights under the Constitution of the United States, the court is bound by the supreme law of the land. The same Constitution of the United States, the court took an oath to support and defend. This set of circumstances operates to place the court and all officers of this, in this matter who have taken an oath to support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States in a conflict with any other perceived oaths or duties. The oath to the Constitution of the United States is a paramount oath, and perjury of that oath can carry severe penalties. Under the foregoing set of circumstances, there is no set of facts that the state of Texas, county, or city can bring forward that allow the court to grant the relief that the state of Texas, county, and city is requesting. Therefore, I require that the court comply with its oath to the Constitution of the United States and dismiss the complaint. It's perfect. It really cuts to the chase. Anyways, that's it. That's all there is to it.
It's all 51?
Sorry?
51 paragraphs, that's fine.
Yeah. 5 pages.
Wow.
5 pages.
5 pages, okay.
Do you have that on the site yet?
Sorry?
Do you have that on the site yet, Glenn, or is it just on your machine?
It's on my hard drive. I can email it to you if you want.
Please, yeah.
So basically just ask for the transcribed presentation, oral presentation.
Sorry?
Basically it's
The
a...
money. Ask for the thing about money. It's fine.
money, okay.
You want it too?
Yes, please.
Anyways.
Probably people like to try to use that on their mortgage, huh? Yeah, if they have a mortgage.
I usually recommend people stay well clear of mortgage stuff because they just foreclose on you. They operate under the rules of contract, and
Right.
because I went through it in 2011, and I had a bank to rights case on them, and they knew it.
Yeah.
But I only found out later that I gave them 30 days to respond to my initial letter to them. And I found out within that 30 days, the bank just said, screw this, sold the note.
Yeah.
They just sold it, got rid of it, dropped it.
Paid off again.
See,
And then
there's...
the bank contacted me.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I contacted them because I had about $700 in my bank account, and they took it and closed the account.
Yeah.
And then they said, don't deal with us anymore, don't send letters. It's nothing to do with us now. It's all down to our lawyers.
There's
and then later I found out, obviously, it was the law firm that bought the note, and then they tried as a third-party debt collector. But because they were lawyers and because they deal with this all the time, they just forced the issue completely. And then when it got into the private equity court at the end, the judge just said, "Did you get the money? Did you get the house?"
Right. Right.
Yes. Yeah. You can't lie.
Right.
You know, I tried to offset it by saying, well, it was my money. I gave that money to the bank.
Right.
So they didn't loan me anything. Did you get the money? Did you get the house? Yes. I'm fine for the plaintiff.
It's
End of story.
the reason is, and a lot of people don't get this, is that it's equity. Okay, a mortgage is an equitable interest in property.
Yeah.
And under equity, there's a maxim of law, the clean hands doctrine. In other words, you have to have clean hands. You could sue the bank, but you better be current on your payments. You got to be completely current. You could sue them and claim all the fraud that's in there. Maybe you'll get it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But you got to be current on the payments and sue them. And that's the problem. A lot of people don't realize that. They're late on the payments and then they file a lawsuit. And that's what happens because you don't have clean hands.
And you
I
signed the
made a
contract.
mistake because I started out with clean hands as well because I was still paying when I
Right.
was sending them the letters.
Right.
But like I say, I didn't know until later on that within the first 30 days the bank just said, I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
I don't want to touch it. And they sold the note.
Right.
And it was later on in the process that I said, I'm not paying anymore.
There's people, like there's a lady that I know in Texas, lives in Flower Mound. You know where Flower Mound is? It's a nice area north of Dallas, north of Fort Worth, Mid-Cities area. It's a very expensive area. Like the houses there are like $350,000. And in Texas, you can buy a brand new house for under $100,000. So this is an expensive neighborhood. Anyways, she went through a foreclosure 10 years ago, and she's still in the house. And she's been out of work, and so she didn't have, like the taxes on a house like that are probably $15,000 a year.
Right.
And she was out of work and couldn't afford to make the tax payments. And so she went down to the county tax assessor collector and starts reading them the Riot Act saying, who rendered, under Texas statutes, it has to be rendered for taxation. She goes down there, who rendered this property for taxation? I'm going to sue their butt off. And immediately they came out and said, don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls.
Yeah.
It was as easy as that in New York and New Jersey state. They fight like hell.
Well, again, the laws are different. And where they get you in New York and New Jersey is if you have a mortgage, there's lawyers that are involved that complete that transaction, and there's a land transfer tax that
Right.
gets paid.
Right.
And so that ties you into it. That's the contract. You must be one of the slaves if you're paying this tax. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's how they do it.
Right. Because people don't fight. That's why they want an attorney there at the closing table.
Right.
And yet, if an attorney, if you gave that information to an attorney, read this, he'd say, "Have a nice day. I'll take it home and read it for 2 or 3 days." Or and they're trained in law.
Right.
But the average person has no training, but they're anxious to get in that house. And, I want to.
Right.
I'll sign here, sign here, sign.
Right.
And they don't even read it. They sign it in their
Right.
life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
Exactly.
So basically, they're at fault for doing that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, well, what they should be doing is they should be giving you those closing documents in advance so you
Yes.
can read them over.
That's right.
And they don't do that. They dump all that stuff, and you have a pile of paperwork like that, and then they tell you, oh, this is nothing, and oh, that's nothing, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they do that. I've been there and done
Oh,
that, got
sure.
the T-shirt.
Yeah.
And so, it's again, but you're right. You should say, you need to send me those in advance so I can look them over and make sure I'm okay with everything.
right.
And if we have to put off the closing for a day or two, whatever. You know, I want those documents so I can review them.
And what if you came back with the documents and you signed all rights reserved without prejudice?
Well, you're nullifying your signature there.
Pardon me?
You're
I know.
nullifying your signature.
I know
Well,
that.
you can't sign a contract. You know, people do that on affidavits, and we're going to talk about that in my video about, because people put it on affidavits and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
You basically nullified that affidavit.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an affidavit anymore. It's nothing. You know, the idea of an affidavit is you got to make it powerful, and so you have to accept full responsibility for what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you go and put without prejudice in there, you just took the signature off the page.
The
Okay,
only
so
time I ever use that is on official forms that
Okay.
they want me to fill in.
Exactly. Exactly. If they're forcing you, especially like they got you in their jail or something like that, and they'll want you, you'd be writing without prejudice on everything.
you know, I just realized that information I told you about with that international. I did have that on there, very fine print under mine. I did write that on that. It was a 2-page that this fellow wanted. I'll talk about that later. In other words, the one where I'm trying to get those funds back. So technically, my signature is not on there. You know?
Technically.
So that's basically, that makes it even more void, because it was void because of the incorrect writing of the, of the property
So
itself.
the burden's on you to bring that up.
Right, but I mean, I could bring up both of those and basically, okay, and then continue with that. Because I didn't,
If you sign something without prejudice, there's no signature on
yeah, I forgot about that, because I'm thinking I didn't put something on there.
there. Right.
But I put.
We're going to talk about that, and
Okay.
when I go through this without prejudice presentation.
Okay,
But you definitely, if you sign it without prejudice, there's no signature on
yeah, it was in very fine print. But
there. There was a friend of mine in Texas. His name's Kevin Hines.
Yeah.
He's they call him the banker. I don't know. You ever heard of him? Anyways, he said that a federal judge told him that, about 10 years ago, that if you put without prejudice, there's no signature there.
Right.
Well, in essence, it's what they refer on, what lawyers do when they send you any correspondence that they don't want to be used as part of the legal process. They send you a letter and it's noticed at the top,
Right.
without prejudice.
Right.
It's not as a signature.
They do that in
the whole
Canada.
thing.
They do that in Canada. And
Yeah.
so therefore you can't sue them for anything in that letter.
Yeah.
That letter is not admissible as evidence.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
So I'm thinking it's the same here. As soon as you put without prejudice,
Right, it
lawyer
is.
to lawyer, you can't use it.
You can't.
It doesn't exist.
There's no
Outside
signature.
the process.
Right.
That's right. There's no signature there. They're not
There's no
responsible.
words there because they put without prejudice right at the top.
I know.
So everything
I
after
know.
that
You see
point-
that in Canada all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to sign everything. If you're being coerced into signing something, just sign without prejudice. Put without prejudice. That's all you have to do.
Can you use that on closing documents, like if you're purchasing?
Well, if you want to close on the house, though, you can't,
Right.
because
Yeah.
they'll see that and they'll say, well, there's no signatures on here, so come back when you want to close.
Because they'll have an attorney there, I'm sure.
You see
right?
what I'm saying? Yeah, of course. Well, but you got to understand, there's lawyers involved.
Mhm.
There's mortgages. I mean, most people can't afford to buy anything without a mortgage.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't buy it with a mortgage. If there has to be a mortgage, then I'll live in an RV or something. See
Right.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And where I'm renting, at least it's honest renting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And because you're dealing with the bankster thief. So, but I do own land. I've got several parcels of land, but it's kind of off the beaten path. It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But it's owned. It's free and clear. I have absolute ownership. I don't pay property taxes on it. It's absolute ownership on the land. And so, I mean, there's nothing stopping me, if push comes to shove, moving my RV out there if I want to. You know what I mean? And right now, I'm looking to trade I got a fifth wheel. I want to trade it in for a Class A motorhome. And so that's what I'm working on when I get back to Texas, actually. But so the thing is that it's if you wanna, I just don't do mortgages, and I don't do lawyers. If they want, like if I buy land, you know where I buy land? I buy it on eBay.
Right.
I can't tell you how many parcels I bought on eBay.
Yeah.
And there was land, if I had the money, there was 40-acre parcels available, you know, east of El Paso that they were selling for $3,600. If I would have had the $3,600, I would have bought it in a heartbeat. But I didn't have the $3,600 at the time. And $3,600 for 40 acres, that's less than $100 an acre.
Now wait a minute, you're buying this property, you said there's no taxes, so is it that you didn't record the deed, or is it because of, it's,
That was a land
It's
patent
all-
transfer though, wasn't it? That's why.
Sorry?
You did the land patent, bring the land patent forward, which is why you...
If they, 9 times out of 10, what I'll do is I'll have a trust buy it, a trust or an LLC, okay? And because they want to put the wording in there the way they want, and I'm not going to get in a big argument with them.
right,
You know, I'll just let them put the wording in they want, and then when I'm ready to bring forward the land patent, then I'll work on getting the land patent. And if I want to get a meets and bounds legal description and do things, then that'll be my project, and I'll work on it. It'll take maybe 6 months or a year. And then when I got it all ready, then I'll transfer it from the trust of the LLC to me, the living man.
right.
And that's when I put in all the wording that I want, and I've never used lawyers. They're going to use lawyers, so it's going to have all these,
Right.
you know, easements and all this other shit.
Right, right.
But
That's exactly what I was saying. Exactly. In other words, put it in there, and then from there, do it all, redo it in your name, and then have it, you know, right.
right,
Put a silver dollar or Lawful.
right.
You know,
That's another thing
Yeah.
is that when I buy land, when it comes to me, it's paid for in gold or silver coin, and it says right on it that it's matter of fact, I call it a bill of exchange. And another thing I do is I have the buyer and the seller both sign it, and so I have to have someone else sign for the trust or the LLC, and I sign for me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that I do. That's all part of my land titles. We already went through land titles last weekend because that was the basic stuff that I've been through before. And what happens on the first weekend is I used to have stuff prepared to go through, and everybody had their own mind about what they wanted to go through, and so I don't even prepare anything the first weekend. It's stuff that I've been through before. I've got hundreds of YouTube videos up, so you guys tell me what you want to talk about. So every time it seems like we talk about land patents, asserting sovereignty, citizenship, and asset protection. That's like every event that seems like we're talking about that.
I know.
Right.
That's what people want to talk about, so that's fine. We can talk about that, and that's what we talked about last weekend. And so we covered all of that stuff last weekend. But yeah, that's what I do. Is I'll transfer it, and I'll bring my stuff with the transfer documents, my titles to my land. I own like 20 acres in West Texas, another 10 acres in West Texas. I own 5 acres in Arizona, and then several 1-acre parcels in Arizona too. But they're all like off the beaten path. But right now I've got some cryptos, and you see what cryptos are doing now lately. They're starting to really take off. And so, you know, man, it would have been nice to. I was talking about doing a Bitcoin field trip yesterday, and what's Bitcoin at right now? Yeah, Bitcoin's at 15,500 right now.
It went up again a couple thousand.
It's been up a couple $1,000 in the last couple of days.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Litecoin's at 61. Could have got Litecoin at like about 55 or 53 a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, so if you guys want to do a Bitcoin field trip, there's some ATMs in Atlantic City that's not too far from here, and we can go down there and we'll see how it's done. But we'd have to go through some foundational stuff about setting up your wallet and that kind of stuff before we go. It's up to you guys if you want to do that. I don't know if there's any interest or not, but I am into cryptos for sure. I'm also into gold and silver. So I don't have any gold right now, but I definitely have some silver. There's a lady that says she's a remote viewer, and she said that, and with all of this chaos going on right now, I wouldn't be surprised. She said that sometime between the 15th of December and the 15th of January, that gold and silver are both going to pop. She said that gold is going to pop to, she's thought 2,400, which is $300-400 from where it's at now, maybe $500. But she said silver is really going to pop. She said silver is going to go to $800. Well, and it'll stay up there for a couple of days, and it'll come down to above half, somewhere above half. She figured maybe 500, and it'll stay there for a while. But it's the beginning; it's going to keep going up. And I don't know how much you guys know about Cliff High, and there's other people that are talking about this. They say that there's three, Roswell, Area 51, these UFOs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they say that we've actually been shooting down UFOs and then going and getting all the technology out of them, and that's why we have printed circuits and cell phones and computers and all the stuff that we got nowadays is because they took it out of like that UFO that crashed in Roswell, and there's a bunch of them that they've been capturing, and some of them they shoot down, but they still get the technology out of them. And they say that I don't know if you remember, that John Kerry, just before Obama left office, John Kerry went down to Antarctica on a kind of a visit on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other people that went down to Antarctica. They say that there's 3 giant, 30 miles across UFOs that are down there, frozen in the ice, and that have been there for probably hundreds of thousands of years, and there's systems in these things that are still working. And they say that there's Cliff High says it. There's Jim Willey's another guy. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Jim Willey. He's he has a newsletter. He's a PhD in statistics. He's a math wizard. He's got this newsletter called Golden Jackass. He's got these contacts on Wall Street, and he calls them the Voice, right? And he says that they're both saying, there's other ones too. They're saying that silver has unique electrical characteristics that only silver has, and it's actually a certain isotope of silver, and that's needed for these. Like Trump is making them declassify. I went to this extraordinary science symposium in the 90s, and there was a physicist that was there, and he was talking how he had developed a over unity device, a free energy device, and he had patented this thing, and as soon as he patented it, the military classified it. And so he couldn't sell it or anything like that, or couldn't tell anybody about it other than the fact that he'd done it. And Trump has been making them declassify that stuff. And like for example, there was an article I read recently, and I do aerospace engineering consulting, so I kind of follow that stuff, Anyways, there was a device, a system that they're going to start using in our fighters. It's a helmet that the pilot, all he has to do is think what he wants to do, and the airplane will do it. And yeah, uses brainwaves, I guess. And the pilot just has to think, you know, what he wants to do: bank left, bank right, shoot the missiles, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it does it. And so that's something that MIT is. They've released the patent to MIT, so they're going to start putting it into the fighter jets and stuff like that now. Anyways, so Trump is making them declassify that stuff. That's, I think, why he started up the Space Command, or not Space Command, Space Force. Yeah. That's right. And so, Trump is brilliant. He's 3 steps ahead of everything. And Cliff High, they say that silver has unique electrical characteristics, and it is indispensable for these high technology devices, and that they're developing. Okay, anti-gravity devices and things like that. Replicators. You remember how in Star Trek you go up to this thing that looks like a microwave and you say pot roast, and it whirs for a couple minutes, and then you open the door and there's a pot roast there. Well, we've actually got primitive ones already. They're called 3D printers, and what they're saying is we're gonna. I work in engineering. I know how this stuff works. They're gonna tweak it and adjust it and play with it and try this and try that, and the next thing you know, they'll be making pot roast. You know what I mean? And it'll be better than you can make because it won't have all the impurities and crap in it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so you won't need to have farmers. You won't need to have any of that stuff. And what Cliff High says, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, well, he says that silver is going to be absolutely critical for these kinds of devices, and they're going to come door to door looking for anything that has silver in it. And like in this keyboard on this computer, if you look behind this keyboard, there's a little plastic sheet, and it's got these where the keys sit, a little button there, and then a strip of silver that goes back to a data strip that hooks up to the motherboard, and those are all silver. Those are all silver. Silver, I don't know why they use silver, but they are. And so any keyboard, people throw those things away. And they're full of silver. And not a lot, it's a little bit, but a silver, Cliff High says that silver is going to become more valuable than gold. And that's what they're all saying, that silver as a percentage is going to go way up, way more than gold. Yeah. But Cliff High says that it's going to become, and they'll quit using it for money. And what he said, Cliff High is a computer nerd that he used to work for Microsoft in the 90s, and they would fly him all over the world to put out their fires. And so he's a computer nerd, he's a coder, he writes code, and he's been doing it, he's like in his 60s, so he's been doing it all his life. And he developed a web bot back in the 90s where it would go and it would. He said we're all psychic, and he said that, but we don't know it. But it comes out in how we use our words. And he says, so his web bot goes and scrapes blogs and websites and all sorts of stuff for how people use their words, and changes in how they use their words. And then he can make predictions based on that. And so he goes out there and he has a way of processing the data, millions of blogs all over the world. And he's been talking about this stuff for decades. He said that this stuff was going to happen. He just didn't know exactly when it was going to happen. But he said that we're going into the age of the Jetsons, you know, with anti-gravity and all sorts of stuff like that, replicators. He said that we're actually going to get the replicators so good that we'll be able to replicate silver. And at that point, silver will become worthless. But until then, he said it'll be the late 2020s when we start being able to replicate silver. And so in the meanwhile, he said silver is going to become it's going to go beyond the price of gold. They're going to quit using it for money because it's too expensive. And there'll be people coming door to door looking for anything that's silver. They'll pay you cash for it. You see what I'm saying? and he says silver is gonna. He said that in his data sets, he saw that when gold is $4,000 an ounce, silver will be $1,000 an ounce. And he said that there's a meme in his data sets that shows some guy in New York had a Rolls Royce, and he had bought it 6 months before. I don't know what those things sell for, but I'm guessing at least $250,000.
Yeah.
Anyways, had bought a Rolls Royce brand new 6 months before, and he had to sell it. And there had been, he says, there was a bond market crash. Now, if you know anything about the bond markets, they work inverse to interest rates. In other words, if the market crashes, the price goes down and the yield goes up. So the interest rates go through the roof. And if it's a bond market crash, then it's probably treasury notes. There's a default on treasury notes, treasury bills. That's when you get a bond market crash. The whole market crashes, right? The price goes down, nobody wants it, the yield goes through the roof. Anyways, he said there was a bond market crash and he wanted something real for his car. And what he got was 100 pieces, 100 silver eagles. Now, you think about that, if that car was worth $250,000 and he got 100 silver eagles, 1 ounce each, that means the silver's worth $2,500 an ounce at that time. This would be 100 at 2,500 would make 250,000. And so silver's worth $2,500 an ounce. At that time, he doesn't know when it is, but he said it showed up in his data sets. Doesn't know when. I mean, if it did, you could do all sorts of things. But anyways, so the point is that, you know, I would definitely, I'm buying silver. I actually sold some of my cryptos to buy some silver recently because of Penny Kelly said it's going to pop, you know, coming up pretty soon. So I figured, well, you know, if it did, I don't know if it's good or not. I'm not the one that's doing that. But if it did, even if I sold a roll of silver for $500 a coin, you know, that's $10,000 for a roll of silver that I'm buying right now for $500. That's pretty good money, you know. Anyways, who knows? I guess we'll see. I sold some of my cryptos to buy some silver, anyways. The thing about silver is that people can steal it from you. Whereas cryptos, it's really hard for them to steal that from you. As long as you got that private key, it's like,
And you don't keep it online.
I was going to
you
say,
can't keep it online for
Yeah.
sure,
'cause if things go down, you know,
right?
how do you access them?
Well, if you have and people are always concerned about power outages, and that's true. That's something to be concerned about, but you have to understand how cryptocurrencies work. You know, it's the blockchain, right? And so the blockchain is literally every transaction it's a distributed ledger. That's what it is. So every transaction, all a blockchain is a public key and an amount. And you have to have the private key to get access to it. So if you have, like I've got wallets on this phone. This is my cold storage here. I don't know, have you ever heard of cold storage? In cryptocurrencies, it's called cold storage.
Oh, yeah, so they can't detect anything?
It's not online,
Yeah.
right? This is a regular phone. I bought it off a friend of mine. It's damaged, actually. The screen's cracked. So I got it cheap. It's an S6 Edge Plus. It's a nice phone. I might even get the LCD replaced. Oh, look at that. It's still on. Anyways, so this is, I've got a couple wallets on here. This one's actually an activated phone. Okay, it's an AT&T phone. So anywhere where there's AT&T signal. But this is it's a pouch that shields it from signal. So as long as it's in this pouch, it won't get any signal. It's completely cut off from the world. When this phone is out of the pouch, even if it wasn't activated, all you need is Wi-Fi, and you can get on the internet, and you can do all sorts of stuff. You can do anything you can do with the computer.
Really?
With this phone, or any of these smartphones, doesn't have to be activated. Okay? In other words, if it's an AT&T phone, you don't have to have it activated with an AT&T phone number and all that. You can get a Google phone number, and you can have it all set up to where you get Google phone calls, and it'll work just fine. People do that stuff all the time. They'll go to McDonald's, and they'll get on their Wi-Fi with a phone that's not activated, and they'll make phone calls. As long as it got Wi-Fi, you can make phone calls. And so you don't need to have it activated on AT&T.
Okay.
So anyways, but you do need Wi-Fi.
Okay, right.
So it's called cold storage, okay? Because it's not online, okay? That's the idea of a treasure wallet and those kinds of wallets.
Right.
So this phone is actually activated, but it's like my backup phone because that's on Verizon. This one's on AT&T. It's like, you know, if I use it as my backup phone, but I hardly ever use it. I pay $100 a year on AT&T, and it's good for a whole year. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to pay it here sometime coming up before Thanksgiving. I'm pretty quick. I'd probably go and buy a $100 prepaid AT&T card and load it up, and it'd be good for another year. And so that's pretty cheap. It's like $9 a month, you know, to have. And I can, but it's only unlimited talk and text, no data.
Okay.
So, but all I need is Wi-Fi, and I got all the data I want.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So anyways, I have wallets on here, but I could actually take this phone and drop it in a bucket of water, and it wouldn't matter at all about my wallets. Because the blockchain, once you understand how the blockchain works, the blockchain is millions of computers all around the planet that have like Bitcoin core on it, and they're mining Bitcoin, is what they're doing, okay? And so any computer that's mining Bitcoin has a complete set of the blockchain on it. And the blockchain is every transaction that's ever happened. That's why with Bitcoin, when it's really busy, it takes a while for that transaction to happen sometimes, okay? It might take up to 8 hours, or longer even sometimes, depending on how busy it is. It can take a long time. And so sometimes you can increase your mining fee. And so then it'll speed up your transaction because then the miners, somebody will take it if you increase the mining fee. Because it's mining fees. Everything has fees.
Right.
And so, anyways, so the point is though, is that the blockchain is in these millions of computers, okay, that are all around the planet that are mining Bitcoin. And so you can actually drop this thing in a bucket of water and it wouldn't matter because all you need is your private key. You get another phone, you download the app, you install the app, you log in and you put in your private key and it'll all be there. Because it's not in your phone, it's in the blockchain. And that's the beauty of the blockchain. And so that's why the banksters, that's why I like it. Because the banksters cannot create any Bitcoin. The best they can do, they can manipulate it, there's no doubt, that because what they do is they'll just use a bunch of fake Federal Reserve notes and buy up a bunch of Bitcoin, and then they can sell a bunch real quick or buy a bunch real quick and manipulate the price by doing that. But that's all they can do. They can't do anything like they do on Wall Street with the naked short selling. You know what naked short selling is, right? Where they sell a bunch of stuff they don't have. Right. Can't do that with Bitcoin because because of the blockchain. They can't sit there and say we got a bunch of Bitcoin that doesn't exist because the blockchain says there's millions of computers around the planet that are comparing information every second, and they're saying sorry, you don't have it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the beauty of the blockchain. So anyways, so this is my phone that I keep. I've got wallets on that phone, but there's really nothing in that phone. This one has wallets that has something in them, but even in here, nobody can get access to them without knowing how to get into this phone. So it wouldn't do anybody any good to steal this phone, because the only thing they could do to get into the phone is they'd have to reset it, is what they'd have to do. And when they reset it, they wipe everything out. And so then I just get into the phone, and I'll log into I'll download the app, and I'll put in my private key, and I'll be up and going again. And that's the beauty of it, because you could actually, like they're talking about charging customs, hitting you with customs duties to go for cryptos. Well,
Right.
that's the biggest joke there is, because all you got to do is uninstall the app and then take it through customs, and then once you get on the other side of customs, reinstall the app, put in your private key, and then plus don't let them in your phone.
Right.
You know, don't let them in your phone. Screw you, you're not getting in my phone. I don't care. And so they talked about that. I think it was just a trial balloon, and they realized they probably can't do it. It's not realistic. So you could go anywhere in the world and have literally, and you could send millions of dollars just like that, no questions asked. You don't have the banksters wanting to know your girlfriend when you're 3 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or any of that garbage. You can send Bitcoin to whoever for whatever, and there's nothing they can do about it. That's the reason I like cryptos. Not that I have anything to hide, it's just that it's none of their damn business. You know?
Right.
So, anyways, so that would be the training that I would suggest that people we'd go through, is make sure they know how to set up a wallet. Matter of fact, I could show them how to buy some Bitcoin for themselves, if you're interested, or I'll buy some Bitcoin for me, whichever. You know, I'm
Right.
easy. But it's not that difficult, anyways.
Now, to buy, you have to go, like you're saying, Atlantic
You
City.
go to an ATM.
An ATM, okay.
Now I can actually buy Bitcoin. I've got a Coinbase account, and so I can do it through my bank account. I can have it actually done pretty quick there, but it's not anonymous,
Right.
because in order to get that Coinbase account, I had to give them photo ID and all the rest of it. So, but
Right.
you go to an ATM,